Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, my name is Paul, and this is to go over things I am curious about and things I've looked into I like to share. So today's video, I wanted to address, in my opinion, the most important trait in leadership. And this is the culmination of a couple podcasts that I've listened to, some spiritual talk, some symbolism, and within a recent book that I read as well. So I was recently listening to a podcast from Lex Friedman and Jocko Willink, and they were talking about the question of leadership and what is more important, the love or the fear. Like, would you rather have your people that love you, or would you rather have the people that fear you, right? And I was thinking about, so it was that love and fear was what was on my mind. I recently read a book that I'll probably do a book review on pretty soon. And it was on one of the most important, or the most important trait a leader can have is inspiration. And when I was thinking about these two together, connecting it with symbolism, this is, I feel like, one of the most profound insights that I've had. And again, it may be out there somewhere, but it made sense in my mind when I started thinking about all these different questions that are being asked and these different opinions on why this makes sense within this conversation. So I'll try and explain this as best as possible. So I do agree. I think inspiration is the most important trait that a leader can have for a multitude of reasons. I think one of the main things that it does is it answers this question of the importance of having your people love you or fear you. Okay. So with what inspiration does, and I would say inspiration, not only in potential of ability, but potential of character. Because if we have a leader who has potential of ability, but not potential of character, we tend to admire them for their skill, but not admire them as a person. So they may be, inspired to get better at whatever craft, but they don't want to follow necessarily that person because they don't like that person necessarily. They're just, okay, they're good. So when I say the most important trait for a leader is inspiration, I'm talking about both inspiration in the excellent sense of ability, but also inspiration in the sense of character. And so what this does is it creates within the followers a love for their leader. So when we have a person who's very capable at doing something, but then a person whose character is, utmost, we tend to gravitate to these people because we like them, we want to be around them, and we also see, okay, they are of value to us to teach us how to get better at our craft. And so in a way, a leader who is inspiring his followers is an ideal. Okay. And so this obviously creates the love aspect, the loyalty aspect, but what this also does, and this is why I think it answers the question of, and it has both the love and the fears, because when you have an ideal and that person is an ideal on multiple levels, and this is where it gets symbolic, they also become a judge. Okay, because it's what happens whenever we see anyone accomplish any awesome task of life. It shows us human potential, right? So if someone makes a breakthrough in anything, it shows us, okay, that is human potential right now. And then it always makes us think further and further and further. And so these new breakthroughs become judges almost compared to the past, and it makes us keep going further. And so when we have a leader who is inspiring his followers on the ability level and the character level, that ideal that the follower looks to and wants to emulate also becomes a judge when they don't emulate. So if they see the leader who is better than them in ability at the certain thing, but also can treat people better than them, and the followers are here and they're not treating people, there's almost a judgment that's going on silently that happens to the followers. And because they love the ideal, because they're so loyal and they see the ideal who treats them so well, there's almost a fear of letting the ideal down, letting the leader down. And so now you have the aspect of when this leader is inspiring and creating that love and that loyalty, there's also fear of letting down. There is a fear of the person, but it's also almost a fear of what that person represents, right? And because they're so attracted to them, in a way, it also becomes letting themselves down. So the fear of letting the leader down has also simultaneously become a fear of letting self down, because we know, because we admire them and because they represent maybe things that we desire. When we let them down, we also know simultaneously that we are letting ourselves down. And so there's becomes this fear of crossing the boundary of the ideal, right? And so when the leader is inspiring his or her followers to excel in craft and in character, this inspiration promotes both love and fear at the same time. And here's another kind of facet of it. Whenever the follower, let's say, fails to meet the ideal, here's the important part: they don't run away out of fear of bad judgment that the ideal gives. Because the ideal, and again, I'm almost glorifying the leader here, and you'll see where I'll take it in a second, but because of the character of the leader, they also know that they can go to the leader for correction. Maybe they keep failing and their own self-judgment is getting to them. They feel the weight of the leader's judgment, even though the leader hasn't said anything, but just because of the excellence of the life that he or she lives. But because of the character, they also know that they can go to the leader and ask for help. So there's this loyalty, there's this fear, there's this love, but then there's also this: I can still go to the leader and ask for help, even though I'm failing to live up to the excellence that the leader is putting forth in all the areas of life. And this is where I wonder if it almost gets symbolic of even the divine in this sense, like with Christ and with God, and what we're doing even in our spiritual lives, in knowing how we walk with God, right? Like, so here's the perfect man, right? The God man, Jesus. And it's like, okay, so here's the ideals that we need to live up to. And we know that whenever we're crossing these, not only are we crossing the divine, but we're also hurting ourselves. And this is where this kind of picture plays into it, that we are hurting ourselves. But some people in their mind, they exaggerate some of the qualities of the ideal. And so some people exaggerate the qualities of the judgment of God. And so they run away when they're not doing well, rather than understanding, because the ideal is also the highest in character, it should draw us to going to, instead of running away from God, right? It should draw us to going to God whenever we don't live up to the things, whenever we break those various rules, etc. It should lead us to going to. And so this is where I was thinking about this, and I was like, man, a good leader that inspires really is emulating what Christ has done for us. Because I was like, okay, here he lived this perfect life, but then he left. But when he left, he said it was for the disciples' benefit, and he sent the Holy Spirit that would go on, continue to, lead us into all truth, and pretty much help us see Jesus in all things. And I was thinking about what that means for the leader as well. And I was like, okay, so the leader not only is this person who inspires on these various levels, but is one who enables their followers as well, and doesn't leave them in the dust of hopelessness because the leader has left now. What the leader also does is, in the absence, they enable them to still follow them. And this is, and again, I know this is symbolic of what I just pointed out, but the leader who fails to enable, even in their absence, in a way has failed, because when they were present, it was all about them. Even though, the relationship between them and the followers were great, it was still all about them, and they failed to reproduce themselves, right? But when we take after Christ in the sense of enabling when we're gone, we then multiply our leadership, because we have not only lived out the example, but we have enabled. And because we've enabled our followers to be reproduced into leaders themselves, who then continue to represent the ideal, well, then the chain can go on forever, right? And this is to me, this inspiration is what it's the unlock, if you will, on the question on which one would you rather have, love or fear. Inspiration allows both to happen while still promoting a safety to fail within, while following. So it promotes both while still allowing a safety to fail when following. So I wanted to share this. I felt like it was a pretty cool insight. It answered questions on multiple fronts on leadership, and then obviously even getting into the spiritual life as well, which I feel like that's where a lot of these truths go. A lot of these truths that we see in the, in our world end up having the spiritual realities behind them. So, to me, it only made sense that this was the conclusion that I came to. But I want to know your thoughts down in the comment section below, whether you agree, disagree, if you think there's a different aspect of leadership, maybe that's more important than inspiration, or if you just even have a comment on if it's better to be loved or feared. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. With that being said, I will see you guys on the next one.